Hey y'all, it's Kim. So this is the JFK Files chapter or part 22. I'm gonna start with this longer document because it's got like 8 pages. Then I'll probably do a few other like videos because this one's so long. Anyway, has says something about the Watergate file, 8th of May 1973, memorandum for Deputy Director for Operations. Subject is media inquiry to Cuban exile journalist in Miami regarding Cuban involvement in Watergate case and attitudes in the Miami area. It says this memorandum is for information only. On 7th of May 1973, we were advised by station at WH in Miami that two employees of the station WH Miami proprietary had told the station that one Rene Vieira Gonzalez, a Cuban exile journalist who writes for Diario Los Americas and owns the Westchester Mall bookstore in Miami, received a call in early May from one the first name unknown, Gottlieb, who said he worked for the Times in Washington. Gottlieb is believed to be Sanford Gottlieb, 11102 Brandywine Street, Kensington, Maryland, who was formerly an employee of the National Committee on Sane Nuclear Policy. A pretext call to the Washington Bureau of the New York Times verified that one Sandy Gottlieb was employed there. Gottlieb asked Vieira what people in Miami were saying about the Watergate case and what participation the Cubans had in it. He specifically asked about the activities of Ronaldo Pico, former 2506 Brigade member, Orlando Piedra, former chief of Cuban Bureau of Investigation in Batista government, and Rolando Masferrer, a former Cuban senator and self-admitted former communist. He also asked if ITT had an office in Miami, whether Joaquin Sanguinis Perdomo, former chief of a WH Miami proprietary who was amicably terminated in 1972, and Juan A. Paula, former WH Miami proprietary employee and former controller of the Revolutionary Democratic Front, or FRD, and currently employed by OGC proprietary, were still in the Miami area. He was also interested in Edgardo Butari, Cuban born in West Tampa, Florida, a former Cuban congressman and minister of commerce who is reportedly associated with Mr. Carlos Bebe Rebozo. According to Gottlieb, Butari was appointed as political chief in the Republican Party. Gottlieb apparently has current information on the activities of the person he mentioned. For example, he knew that Juan A. Paula was involved in the jewelry business. Paula and Antonio Felix Genova Corso, a WH Miami proprietary employee, recently purchased a jewelry business, and he knew that Ronaldo Pico had resided in Venezuela and has recently returned to the United States. The phone conversation lasted about 45 minutes, and Gottlieb told Vieira that if he came to Miami, they would have lunch together. Vieira does not know Gottlieb, but talked to him because Gottlieb said he was recommended by Ernesto Betancourt, who has resided in the Washington area for more than 10 years. Betancourt was a former agency asset and is currently chief of economic planning and budget at the OAS. The conversation was initially in English but continued in Spanish. Vieira said he provided no information to Gottlieb on the basis that he is a Cuban exile and did not want to get involved in internal U.S. affairs. We do not know why Gottlieb was interested in Joaquin Sanguinis or Juan A. Paula. Attached are summary biographies of persons of interest to Gottlieb. On 7th of May 1973, Marvin L. Evans, chief, MH Mutual, was briefed on the substance of the report from WH Miami pertaining to Juan A. Paula, who works for the MH Mutual Proprietary, M. Kircher or McKircher and Avant, which utilizes Northwest Management Services, Inc. as office space cover. Among other duties performed by the proprietary are the monthly checks sent to the dependents of imprisoned assets, which are signed in true name by Paula. Evans was unaware that Paula had purchased a new jewelry business in association with Antonio Genova, excuse me. However, he feels that MH Mutual is protected and compartmented from the WH Miami proprietary, and he has the utmost confidence in the proprietary being able to field any questions. MH Mutual communication with the proprietary is by unlisted phone and a post office box. Evans said that McKircher and Avant could possibly be linked to Northwest Management, but the trail would end there. He feels that either proprietary could only be linked to the agency by innuendo. He did say that Howard Hunt was aware of MH Mutual when he served as CA and I guess it's EUR, but it looks like European to me at the beginning. Anyway, Evans feels secure as far as Northwest Management and McKircher and Avant are concerned. Evans mentioned that the bona fide law firm occupying the other portion of the MH Mutual offices are the attorneys for John Dean. These lawyers are cleared and witty. One of the lawyers told Evans that Dean will be the biggest canary singer of the year. The common receptionist area is manned by MH Mutual employees who also monitor all telephone calls, incoming and outgoing, for the other law firm. Evans mentioned that there have been numerous calls from the media and outgoing overseas calls to such places as Japan and Europe. Evans will be traveling to Nassau and returning via Miami on 10th of May 73. He intends to talk with the proprietary people at that time on other MH Mutual business and will also contact COS WH in Miami. The COS has been alerted to expect a call from Evans on 10th of May 1973. James E. Flannery, Acting Chief, Western Hemisphere Division, Director of Security. Attachments A through F biographic summaries. Renee Vieira Gonzalez, reporter for Diario Las Americas, was speaker for Journalism in Exile at meeting held Flagler Theater, Miami, June of 1957. Had also been head of public relations for Cuban National Bank, and date not given. Ronaldo Pico Ramon, formerly AM ICE, 31, 201, 284, 658. POA granted 14th of October 1960 as PM asset. Member 2506 Brigade, captured Bay of Pigs, member of Prisoners Commission, sent by Castro to Miami to negotiate release of prisoners in exchange for mechanical support and other supplies needed by Cuba. Defected and refused to accompany other members of Prisoners Commission on their return to Cuba in July 1961. POA granted 15th of June 1964 for use as CA prop asset. SG Swirled, I think it's 8th of October 1964, OA4, February 1966, amicably terminated 30th of June 1968. As of July 1969 in Caracas, Venezuela. In December of 1969, he was described by a source as one does not know where the bluff begins and ends, what is true and what is a lie. Orlando Piedra Noela, aka Orlando Noela Piedra, and then Orlando Piedra, also Roca. Born 18th of December 1917, Havana, Cuba, believed to be a Cuban citizen currently, was chief of Cuban Bureau of Investigation in Batista government told FBI June of 1959 he was forced to leave Cuba upon fall. Batista reportedly head of anti-Castro group in Miami in June of 1959. In September of 59, reported to be friendly was Rolando Masfer Rojas, ex-Cuban senator and publisher. Piedra reportedly furnished with money by Batista during Batista regime, was included with others as responsible officials considered directly involved in torture and killing of Cuban citizens. Resided in Fort Lauderdale, Florida in February of 1960. During Batista regime, Piedra was in charge of all matters pertaining to gambling, rackets, and contraband. In 1953, in Cuba, Piedra was also involved in business of Chinese contraband, and no indication he was ever used by agency. Rolando Arcadio Masfera Rojas, 201-426-69, former Cuban senator and self-admitted former communist, quite active during early 60s in various anti-Castro activities in the U.S., recently served 4.5 year prison sentence, received U.S. district courts for violation of U.S. neutrality laws. No indication headquarters has been in touch with subject at any time. Born in 1918 in Cuba, typifies worst elements in former regime of Batista. Name connotes ruthlessness, assassination, torture, and extortion, and still considers himself to be a Marxian socialist, has been virulent critic of U.S. in the past. One last one. So Edgar Anthony Butari Pugh, I don't know how you say that, DVM, aka Edgar A. Butari is doctor, aka Edgardo Butari Pugh, 201-276-771, and photo available. While information in his file does not indicate any past or present CIA contact, there is unsourced information in the WHCOG card file, which shows that Batari was in touch with Frank Bender or Jared Droller in Miami in the spring of 1960, apparently in relation to Batari's involvement with the Revolutionary Democratic Front, their FRD. Currently, Batari is involved in many business ventures in South Florida and is reportedly associated with Charles Babbage Rebozo socially and in business. Edgardo Butari was born 14th of August 1909, also given 1914, at West Tampa, Florida, the son of Cuban who fought in the Cuban Independence War, appointed Cuban Inspector General, instructor of the Ministry of State in 1933. He later became Undersecretary of Labor. In 1938, he returned to Cuba and served as Secretary of Commerce till 1940. He later was appointed Minister of the Cuban Foreign Service, appointed Minister of Commerce by Batista in 1942. He held that post until 1944 when he resigned to run for the House of Representatives in Havana. He remained in the House of Representatives until 1952. Batari arrived in the U.S. in March of 1960 to reside in Miami, Florida. He became involved with the Revolutionary Democratic Front. During his first term as Minister of Commerce in 1938, he was responsible for the arrest of several American representatives of large lard exporters in the U.S., Swift, Armor, etc., for increasing prices. At the same time, he endeavored to put forward legislation to nationalistic tendencies, wanting to Yankee imperialism, and seemed somewhat unfriendly to the U.S. He later changed and in 1938 became more anxious to cooperate with the U.S., apparently having gotten over his openly anti-American feelings. However, he did not appear to be dependable regarding the embassy reports. He has been described as astute, clever, intelligent, but slippery. And then whatever they cut off here. Anyway, that's the end of that particular document since it's 8 pages. And I'll see y'all later. Have a good day. Bye.